Good Monday morning to everyone. I guess I'll start out this Monday with a little bit more information. I had mentioned in my original Piphy's Epiphanies video that I have learned a whole lot as I've gone through college. I mean, purposely, I have wanted to learn everything I can about human beings and our surroundings. I mean, as much of the big picture puzzle as I could get. And in doing so, of course, I found myself many times along the way. One of the things, though, that was really difficult for me this week was that I had to recognize, accept, and be okay with having come through a personality disorder. In 1995, just after I was assaulted, where I got to learn firsthand, though I didn't know its name back then, about the bystander effect, as 20-something people stood there and watched in a public place while this guy used me as a jiu-jitsu doll, practice doll. And after that, because of his affiliation with south of the border groups, I was harassed, I was followed, I was threatened, I was going to testify. I was testifying against this guy. I moved out of Imperial Beach and into a shelter in Chula Vista because I didn't feel like I could walk around in the town I grew up in without being followed. And I was being followed. Well, during that time, I took the Minnesota multiphasic psychological evaluation, and so much was happening. I was in separation from my two youngest children's father. There was abuse involved. There was court involved. He was stalking us. Also, I would be riding home on my bicycle from my job 25 blocks away, and he would pop out of the shadows because I got off at 10 p.m. So suffice it to say, things were very chaotic, and I was afraid. So when I took this psych eval, I was super careful to make sure that I told the absolute truth, which means that a lot of the bounce back questions that are meant to catch you in a lie bounced back, because when questions for me with my very literal mind say always and never, I always do this, I never do that, I usually answer them no. Because I am not definitely dependably going to do something every time or not do something every time. It all depends upon the circumstances. At any rate, that came back odd, saying that you steal this and I will fucking hunt you down. There were too many yes answers in the rare occurrence category. That is my book title, Do Not Take It. Like I said, now this is out on the internet, I will hunt you down. I'm a nice Scorpio, but don't steal from me. Anyway. So they said I was either lying or deliberately malingering, which is exaggerating what was happening in my life to try and gain, some kind of sympathy or something out of the deal, which I did not. And also not the psych eval, but with that came a diagnosis from my therapist at the time down in San Diego, of borderline personality disorder. Now, because of the way the psych eval came back and the whole situation, I literally ran out of F's. And I said, no matter what, I did need therapy, but no matter what trauma I was going through at the time, if this was going to be the result of me being as honest as possible, you're as honest as possible on a psychological evaluation, and it comes back and saying you must be lying because this is just way too much. No shit, I thought so too. At any rate, so this week in my behavioral neuroscience class and in my abnormal psychology class, we've been talking about personality disorders. And the chapter I read in Abnormal last week was like looking at the people I grew up with. Indeed. The people I grew up with, the people I married, yada yada. So suffice it to say that it brought a lot up front. And the one thing it brought up front for me is that when I took this Minnesota multiphasic again in 2020, when I joined up with Voc Rehab to start my schooling to become a counselor, BPD didn't come up. There's been some somatization disorder stuff, and of course, when you suppress your emotions, your body is going to somatize. Anyway, somatization is basically where your thoughts, your perceptions create problems in your physiology. So yeah, I mean, my neurological system was overactivated chronically for decades. There will be some physical damage from that, from living with those perceptions and holding on to them, for holding on to anger, for holding on to resentment, for 5 years spent wanting to kill somebody because they hurt my children. All of that very much affects the physical body. So that was expected for me, really. And at any rate, no BPD. But yet, last week when I read about it, the person I was then, the person I was until, after my husband died, probably in 2008, and for a couple years afterward, before I started learning to be, I was that. I had so many symptoms. I definitely fell into that category, and a little bit into some histrionic personality disorder as well. I mean, dude, I grew up with a brother who had antisocial personality disorder, which back then was known as sociopathy, and both of his parents, come to find out when the adopted father passes away, both of his parents were sociopaths. Yet, why not just bring him into the family. And so I had a lot of experiences that came back to me last week. But the most important and wonderful experience is that DBT, Dialectical Behavioral Therapy, for someone with borderline personality disorder, for someone, not just for someone with BPD, but for anyone who did not learn what to do with emotions, it's phenomenal. I watched this movie as part of my abnormal class last week, and it was called Border. It's really good if you want to understand borderline personality disorder and how it can be managed, and you can kind of shift from that. A personality can be changed. You can always change your character. But I had the cards that I was dealt, and in being dealt those cards, dealing with abandonment trauma, being scared to be abandoned again, being abandoned again when I was 9 and my parents split up, being abandoned again a few years later when my father remarried and decided it wasn't very important to be the amusement park dad anymore, and then adopted her 2 children as well. So I was on equal footing with 2 more kids that I love, I will always love, and I've been able to reconnect with my brother Willie. But anyway, I'm watching this movie, and there I am in a couple of the different people that they are interviewing, especially because recently, maybe in summer, maybe, or spring last year, or this year, feels like last year because it was last academic year. I came to realize that I had an identity disorder. According to identity theory, I should have been more than a series of roles. For a very long time, for until very recently, could not tell you who I am, just what I did, what I was capable of being. I was capable of being a mother. I was capable of being a daughter. I was capable of being a fiber artist. I was capable of being a friend, a singer, all those things. But those are roles. Those were things I did, not things I was so much. Though in some ways, yes, an artist I am. But it's more than that. I do art. I'm a creative. So anyway, coming to realize recently that I had to build an identity outside of my what I could create, or what's the word, performance, about what performing I could do. I could perform the job of a property appraiser. I could perform the job of a purchasing agent. You know what I mean. At any rate, so I'm watching this movie, and this is all part of me coming around to going, well, holy crap, I did have BPD. And of course, DBT worked. But this one woman said, I don't know who I am. And she described herself as very chameleon-like. Now, at one point in time, my youngest daughter called me a chameleon, and only a little teeny part of me was insulted. I was like, yeah, dude, I sure am. I'm that adaptable. And I held on to that like a badge because it was a more positive way to frame the fact that, yes, I was able. And I used to also think, man, I think I'm an asset because I can be in any environment and appear to belong there, which is really funny because I never felt like I belonged anywhere. And you know, I have told that to some people that I've been in situations with, in certain environments with, and those people would never have known that I ever felt like I didn't belong. But yeah. Anyway, there was no sense of self. That's what she said as well, and it just freaking created this lump in my throat that I had to engage my radical acceptance in. However, even though for years alone felt so empty that when I was with no one, I was no one. And that's probably why I had no boundaries in terms of who I associated with. If someone seemed to like me, that was usually enough for me. Unless they hurt me or my kids. More my kids than me. But anyway. So yeah. I went through a lot of radical acceptance this week. I went through touching base with a lot of memories that are in the rearview mirror, and I had the opportunity to process some of the emotions that I had suppressed during that time. Of course, I have had physical symptoms as a result. This is what happens when you chronically suppress your emotions for 50 years, and then your body has kept the score, as the book title by, is it Vondeker, I believe, suggests. So, you know, part of my healing has also been reconnecting with that body that I considered an enemy, because as it was sending me the signals that, hey man, we are full of your shit, and here's gastro problems, and here are migraines for you, and back pain, and neck pain, and myofascial pain, and da-da-da-da-da. Yeah. The body keeps the score. Yeah, it does. But you can also reconnect. You can bridge back to your body. You can do things like gentle yoga, where you and your body work together with your breath. I did. And today I don't feel like my body is my enemy any longer, even when symptoms show up. So I just wanted to share that this Monday. I don't know, take what works, leave the rest. I'll try and check in with you again sometime this week, or perhaps by next Monday with another episode of Piphy's Epiphanies. See, it's hard for me to say. Piphy's Epiphanies. Thank you for watching. I know this one was a little bit long, but there was a lot of background, and eventually I will have to share all that because y'all get to know me. All right. I hope you have a good week.